I'm certainly a little biased, but I still have never heard of anyone with Dad's style.
The reason why everybody wanted to play with Walt is because he was the player in the Valley.
Yeah, it was kind of like the soundtrack to the Aspen experience for decades.
Denver native Walt Smith was born with the gift of music.
He took classical piano lessons from the age of 7. And then when the war happened and all the musicians were off at war, they were asking him to come sit in with some of these jazz bands when he was a junior or senior in high school. So he never went to a music school. He kind of just had that gift that he kind of started playing.
While growing up and living on the Front Range, Walt earned a reputation as a respected musician. It was during this time that he met his future wife, Carol.
They met at CU, and Dad was going to Grand Lake every summer to work up there with the boats, and so Mom would go up there with him. You know, he liked the mountains.
His love of the mountains led Walt to Aspen, where he thrived.
He played in '46 for an event at, I believe, the Town Hall, City of Aspen, and that was his first time in Aspen. Then, after that, Steve Knowlton got him up here to play the Golden Horn. And then Freddie Fisher heard Dad and kind of got him more excited. So they started playing at Aspen Highlands. And he played with Freddie Fisher as well at the Hotel Jerome. They played at different places around.
In the 50s and 60s, Walt played at the Red Onion, Golden Horn, Hotel Jerome, and the Freddie Fisher Room at Aspen Highlands.
In the 60s, they then started the Walt Smith Trio, and they started at the Tippler. And Bert Dollander, who was the famous drummer from Sweden, came in, and Dean Billings was one of the first bass players.
I was so happy to see Walt, Bert Dollander, and whoever the bass player was, there were different bass players, playing 7 days a week at the Tippler in Aspen. That really made my time at the time, you know. It was just such a treat. He had a repertoire, no end of beautiful standards, which is the American Popular Song book.
He knew thousands of songs, and he excelled at that. And he even described it. This is my thing. This is where my home is. I always really dug that Walt lived in that space and became a master of that space.
Yeah.
I think it was early 70s when the Tippler was sold, and it turned into disco. And my father was, he didn't love disco.
After the Tippler, Walt and different band members built a huge following at the Sopris restaurant outside of Glenwood Springs.
It was Walt Smith and friends. Chris Goplerud, his drummer, as well as Mark Gray on bass. They were kind of the core trio, and then everybody would come join in. There were many people that kind of came in and out on different nights. Dr. Witt would come in and play bass, and that was amazing.
Walt was the epitome of, and along with Tim and everybody else, of just great jazz. And the Sopris down by Glenwood Springs was just this place where they had people sit in, and Walt was just, and the trio or quartet or quintet, whatever he had, was so gracious and encouraging for people sitting in. And again, I was just kind of getting my feet wet with standards or whatever. But you know, if I could play a solo and have Walt smile at and kind of nod, give me a little, you know, nod, you know, that was like, wow, you know, it was such a great feeling.
And I think you probably turned me on to the Sopris restaurant as well. Came in with the horn slung on my back and was invited to come up and play without hesitation. And he showed that same kindness to everybody that came into the Sopris restaurant.
I played probably for a dozen years at the Sopris, and you know, I didn't measure up to that level, but you know, I learned and he let me learn. He was very generous to me, and really everybody else, you know. There was numerous singers at would come up, and he never turned one down, you know. They'd get up there and do their thing, and, you know, Walt always smiling along with what was going on.
Yeah. But yeah, he was so accepting and, again, gracious and not non-judgmental.
Walt's work took on national prominence after collaborating with a well-known novelist.
He and Leon Uris kind of got together. They were good buddies. Lee came to Dad one day and said, "I'd really like to do a musical, and I'd like you to write the music." And so Dad thought that would be great, and it was named Ari. Some beautiful, beautiful music. And I think it aired 19 times in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, and I'm not sure where else.
He was well supported on the home front.
Carol was an amazing person as well. She was the strength behind him. She was this beautiful woman that always sort of was in the background because Dad was the show. She was sweet and kind and just one of those people that loved unconditionally, would make sure that she talked to everyone in the crowd. So she was quite the amazing woman.
Walt enjoyed playing with impresario Dick Gibson at the swinging weekend jazz parties that were popular for decades.
Those jazz parties were amazing.
They were so amazing. So, you know, your opening cocktail hour was great, and they were just warming up with each other.
Kind of a jam.
And then, of course, you know, everyone dresses up, and it's a fancy dinner, and then dinner and dancing, and I mean, they are tight. It's a great group. Then Sunday morning, they just jam out. And it's just, I'm in awe because they just know all the cues they give each other, and they just each take their turns, and the music is just incredible.
Grand Junction was another favorite Western Slope venue.
He actually did Rhapsody in Blue with the Grand Junction Symphony. And my dad, you know, jazz, it's all improv, so he, you know, didn't have to really read music. And but he certainly had to practice Rhapsody in Blue, and it was beautiful, absolutely amazing.
Over the course of Walt's long career, he made friends and fans in almost every town.
He had connections everywhere he went. He did, like you said, he made friends with everyone. Loved being around people. Loved playing. He just loved playing. Every chance he got, anywhere he could, he would play.
He used to call everybody baby, you know, hey, how you doing, baby? that tells how sweet a guy he was.
Walt Smith played music up until the day he died at age 91.
His birthday was August 12th, and they were doing a concert at the Arts Center in Grand Junction. And they asked him to come sit in on a couple songs for his birthday, celebrate him. And they had a little band behind them. And he passed away that morning.
His music lives on.
More recently, Smile became his theme song. That was just one of his favorite songs. He ended every concert with Smile. And definitely that song is just attached to Dad. So every time anyone hears it, you just think of Dad.
I think I remember Unforgettable. Were you going to say the same thing? Because Mom and Dad both just love that song.
Another song, though, that I always relate to Dad is Take 5. That was always in their playlist.
Take 5 was a biggie, especially at the Tippler, I remember.
Yeah.
Walt's influence on other musicians cannot be overstated.
He was playing at the Tippler, and some of the kids were in town for the Aspen Music Festival every summer. One of the kids asked his friend to come to the Tippler with him and hear some jazz, and this kid was like, really? Okay. He called me up, this gentleman who I didn't know, said that he went to the Tippler that one night with his friend, and that Dad changed his life. And he turned from classical to jazz, and he lives in California and is a jazz musician there now and quite famous.
There was a buoyancy to Walt's music, and his passion for performing never dimmed.
My dad was such a kind soul. He was so kind and so sweet to everyone. Not only his music, but who he was touched so many lives. He had a lot to offer the whole valley, and I think people that knew him know what a special person he really was.